all, fellow educationists whose presence here today demonstrate our shared genuine concern about reading. My heartiest congratulations to Partners for Possibility for highlighting one of today's greatest educational needs in South Africa. Thank you for honoring the Educate Trust by inviting us to present at this timely conference on creating a culture of learning and reading in our country. As far back as the mid-1960s, renowned educationist and reading expert Rebecca Osterweg wrote that the standard of reading was lower than ever, that the situation has tragically deteriorated drastically in the half-century since then is borne out by research in this century. Within the media and the literature, the need is often expressed for the establishment of a culture of reading and learning within South African schools. The contrasting view tends to be one of the dysfunctional schools that have come into being, giving rise to significant learner behavior problems and poor pass rates being encountered in practice. This paper is directed at gaining conceptual clarity as to what is meant by a culture of reading and exploring how such a culture can be nurtured within South African schools. Current thought is that the traditional culture management approach advocated in the literature may not be all that effective in practice, and that an alternative approach that views culture of learning as an emergent phenomenon has its origin in the social interaction taking place within classrooms, schools, learning communities may be more effective. This new culture of learning can argument that educational needs of the first 21st century pose a fundamental challenges for educators and educational practice. According to the researchers, educational practices that focus on the transfer of static knowledge simply cannot keep up with the rapid rate of change that characterize the prevailing context. It is suggested by Thomas and Brown that practices that focus on adaptation or reaction to change fare better, but are still being outpaced by an environment that require content to be updated almost as fast as it can be taught. Implied in effect is a quest for lifelong learning. This is reflected in their introductory quotation that attests to the need for a new culture of learning that is deemed to be more appropriate for a contemporary context of unprecedented change. Vett and Ovis similarly claim that within a contemporary knowledge economy, students need new skills for college and careers, and a failure to foster these skills and a culture of learning leaves them vulnerable. This vulnerability is manifest in the South African skills paradox, where there are significant numbers of unemployed youth, yet business and industry lack people with appropriate knowledge, skills, and experience to effectively function in the knowledge economy. Okay. Others such as Masita, Van Deventer and Kruger, Heistek and Litoko and Smithik tend to argue that one of the main goals in education today is to restore a culture of learning, reading, and teaching in South African schools. I'm now just giving you the research before I come to what our organization focuses on. Masita, for instance, cites vandalism, gangsterism, drug abuse, high dropout rate, poor academic performance, and demotivated learners as observable features for a poor culture of learning. Against this background, one needs to assess the claim by Van Deventer and Kruger that an important challenge facing South Africa schools is the restoration of a sound culture of learning and teaching. Heistek and Litoko echo this sentiment in arguing that one of the main goals in education today is to restore a culture of learning and teaching in South African schools. An analysis of the concept, a culture of learning. Culture could be a paradigm for understanding organizations and ourselves. Paradigm is a grand word signifying a cluster of basic assumptions that form a worldview, a way of filtering knowledge and experience. Culture is also a grand word. I wish I could link the two, present a bold claim and argue it elegantly, for the concept of culture is bringing forth a new way of understanding organizational life. It is a view that has engendered the need for caring schools. It could be inferred that a social contrast of a caring environment will result in cultural attributes that fosters learning within the classroom and school. Lewis claims that this aspect of culture can be identified in the definition attributed to culture, namely, content, the totality of socially constructed and transmitted behavior patterns, social expression, and a common understanding, a sense of group or community. The relationship that exists between the content and the group, context characteristics of the group, content peculiar to the group or differing from that of other group. The latter in terms of a culture of learning will be insightful if it can be found that the nurturing of specific cultural attributes will significantly enhance behavior conducive to learning and contribute to effective behavior patterns that are acceptable within a broader community settings. A golden thread that emerges from the literature is that context, social interaction within this context, and the cultural attributes that emerge from this interaction are instruments in either engendering a culture that facilitates or inhibits learning within the classroom. Grant, Jason, and Lawrence, in a research study conducted at 18 KwaZulu-Natal schools, found that the social context has a fundamental role to play. They contend that many schools located in disadvantaged communities had inherited a legacy of dysfunction, yet some have succeeded in achieving their core responsibility of teaching and learning despite the odds. The researchers claim that the dysfunction in many of the schools post-1994 has discontinued despite government attempt to restore a culture of teaching and learning. The success of those schools that succeeded despite the negative broader community contextual conditions that exist in describing by Grant as being able to engender a context and sense of pride in neatness, good attendance, punctuality, and efficient use of meagre resources. The dynamics of culture change management in order to establish a culture of learning. Formal education has the potential to focus much more than here on the specific developments of these generic dispositions or habits of mind, and thus to position itself more effectively as laying firm foundation for lifelong, life-wide, and life-deep learning. Claxton and Lucas, 2009:14, contend that children are born curious and therefore drawn to learning. I want to concur with Mr. Mutolo when he mentioned about kids. They wonder about things, how they come to be, how they work. They are open-minded, looking for new interests and perspectives. They like to get below the surface of things and to go deeper in their understanding. The descriptions suggest that the need for very specific contextual conditions that will stimulate a sense of curiosity, exploration, and a search for meaning within a classroom setting. Einstein is reputed to have stated that the important thing is never to stop questioning, as curiosity has its own reason for existing. Therefore, the role of a teacher in establishing a classroom context, such as that described in foregoing discussion, could be pivotal and critical in bringing about a culture of learning. Nisibande 2005:2233 comments that one of the crucial elements in bringing about this condition is the need for an open dialogue and tolerance for openness. Wilson observed that the desire to learn, to discover, to figure something out, and to be able to do something well enough to proclaim it as one's own must surely be as strong as any impulse in the human soul. Wilson then questioned why so many children dislike school, the very place society created to nourish their mind so that they can experience personal fulfillment. The answer is vested in the cultural that exists within the school itself. Wilson asserts that key contributors to positive, productive schools are building a culture of learning into the vision and mission of the school and making sure that everyone knows and believes it. The researcher stresses that relationships and caring are critical elements of such school cultures. Wilson 2007:39 and Masita 2005:212 similarly claims that principals of effective school interviewed concur that the school's vision and mission could be used to restore a culture of learning as it focuses the attention of educators and learners on the principle that the school stands for. Masita 2005:213 also stresses the need for all stakeholders to be involved in the formulation of the mission and vision so that they will be able to accept ownership thereof. The shaping and establishment of school culture that supports a culture of learning as endorsed and nurtured by the noble vision and implementation of Partners for Politics is a negotiated product of sharing sentiments. In summary, a culture of learning emerges through a collaborative learning experience, as well as sharing of ideas, expectations, values, and beliefs between teachers, students, parents, and other pertinent role players. The important point to note here from a culture of management perspective is that if a culture of learning is an emergent property, the traditional approach of envisioning a desired culture and establishing such a culture through management practice could be the very reason for the failure in so many schools to transform the culture of the school. Mere statements of desired cultural determinants and intent to establish such culture without giving expression to them through active learning experiences within the classroom could be attributed to the failure experienced in many schools. Until a mindset and context conducive to a culture of learning is established, and all the stakeholders involved start to live out the cultural artifacts through their day-to-day interaction, it is difficult to see how a culture of learning will emerge in practice. The result will be, as noted by President Thabo Mbeki in 1997:1, too many words and very little meaning action. The method is based on a series called Teach Any Child or Adult to Read, which allows anyone with a good command of written and spoken English to learn to teach others to read, write, spell, comprehend, memorize, and study effectively. The methodology has been successfully applied for many decades. The Reeducate method integrates the best of all available methods and a multi-intercessory approach, thus catering to all learning styles. Now I'm introducing you to our reading enema. The Reeducate system implements a reading as a six-legged animal. Okay, in Reeducate we say reading should be a six-legged animal, as indicated, and the first leg is alphabet. That it is very, very critical that if you want to teach our learners or children effectively, we should start teaching them by letters, names of the letters, sound, and formations. Once they master that, we go into spelling. That is our second leg. And under spelling, there are many spelling rules. The first spelling rule will be joining of a vowel to a consonant, in which learners are able to decode the sound. For example, if you join alphabet A and B, because learners already understand the sound of A and B. So we say A for apple, and we say B for balloon. Then when we join together, when we join them together, we have the first spelling rule, which is called a blend. So learners will say ab when they join the two letters together. It is a blending. So as soon as they are able to manage this blending with all the letters of the alphabet, then they will be able to go to the next level, which is comprehension, where they are able to start writing small sentences, paragraphs, and short stories. And then the fourth one is writing and communication. And the fifth one is memory training. Memory training can also be taught in the beginning, because if you come across learners who are having poor memory, and anytime they learn something, they forget quickly, then you can apply memory training. And then the last one is study skills, which is very critical when learners should be able to know how to study for their test, whatever, so that they can apply these skills to help them to remember and to program their lessons. Okay, the body of the animal is attitude. So the teacher's attitude to herself, her colleague, her family, and most particularly her class governs success. By that we're meaning that if you approach your class and from home there's something going on and you are not happy, your attitude counts a lot before your learners or before anybody that you are teaching. So if we don't watch out our attitude, then we are bound to fail. Multi-dimensional approach to language, reading, communication, life skill, and study skills, those are the dimensions. So we say the program is also multi-intercessory, integration of all learning styles, audio, visual, and it's also multi-emotional, eliminating negative thoughts, replacing with feelings of self-confidence, believing God's given abilities and potential. Yeah. Multi-generational could be applied from preschool to old age. In fact, as we have heard before, Reeducate has been in existence since way back around before I was even born. And I'm now 49 years old now. So it is a very, very long organization that has been in existence, and it has played a very crucial role in uplifting literacy in the whole country. I myself have been to various prisons and communities around the country, as far as KZN, which is one of the provinces that is really struggling. I've noticed that in one of the schools that I was deployed in Nanda, it's called, what's the name of the school? Yeah, it's a private school, in fact. I noticed that for the past 3 years, the school was really struggling, and the principal wanted an intervention, an immediate intervention. And with the help of Reeducate, after implementation, of the Reeducate program, the results went up, and that also happened in Eastern Cape in Otlange High School. Not to mention Soweto in one of the schools in Kliptown, where one child who was really struggling came to our program, and in 2 months' time, after failing for the past 2 years, he was one of amongst the top 5 learners for the next 2 years. So this also shows that the program is really working. Okay, to begin healing a non-reading culture, perhaps every partner for Possibility School could send at least 2 teachers each for a full 8-day course. Those newly trained educators could then go do a 1-day overview at their own school. Thus, the whole staff could acquire an insight into the skills on how every lesson become a reading lesson. So that is practically that what we are emphasizing, that to promote reading in every school, let there be, make sure that every lesson become a reading lesson. The first lesson every morning should be a reading lesson, and the principle learned then apply to all subjects throughout the day. So in conclusion, I will say a top priority should be to implement immediately a national rehabilitation reading program to ensure that every teacher learns how to teach a multidimensional approach to reading. Thus, every lesson from foundation phase to metric, regardless of subject and stage, becomes a reading lesson that integrates the 6 legs of the Reeducate reading enema. This will entail all students, teachers, and current primary and high school teachers learning how to teach Reeducation to consolidate a true culture of learning and reading throughout our country. With a fully literate, educated society, South Africa, who has such wonderful people in its population, could become one of the greatest countries in the world, as the culture of reading and learning becomes a national phenomenon of partner for incredible possibilities. Thank you.